Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. This meeting is being hosted by the fantastic Cambridge Radical Feminist Network, who go by the super awesome name Canberra Fems. They have a cool flat and we don't. Very jealous. Thank you to our speakers tonight and for security for being so helpful in the planning of this event. Particular thanks to the University of Cambridge for its commitment to uphold women's rights to free speech, freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of assembly, and freedom of association as already enshrined in the Human Rights Act of 1998, and to women's rights to female-only spaces as already enshrined in the Equality Act of 2010. I will not name any names, but recently, we have seen the examples of the University of Edinburgh and the University of Bristol fomenting climates in which, through institutional cowardice, academia becomes not just complicit, but an active participant in the abuse of women through the erosion of academic freedom and the enabling of bullying, harassment, and intimidation against female students and staff members who deviate from approved scripts. I cannot wait until one of these women take this appalling treatment by institutions with a duty of care to them straight to the High Court. It is high time that academic institutions grew a backbone and took their duty to society seriously. So let's hope that by hosting this event, the University of Cambridge has demonstrated just that. And even though this is a very low bar, is the bare minimum, I think that they deserve a round of applause. Thank you. Our speakers tonight are Dr. Rosa Friedman, Professor of Law, Conflict, and Global Development at the University of Reading, Dr. Sophie Scott, a neuroscientist and senior fellow at the University College London. We have Dr. Alice Sullivan, Professor of Sociology at the University College London's Institute of Education. And we have Dr. Emma Hilton, a developmental biologist and a lecturer at the University of Manchester. So before we hear from our magnificent speakers, I would like to say a few words about feminism in academic and public discourse. When I was invited to share this meeting, my thoughts went to a particular woman. Her name is Laura, and she is a PhD candidate and graduate teaching assistant at a prestigious California university. Her PhD program is Feminist Studies. Nevertheless, Laura was the latest woman going through what all of us on this stage has gone through: the bullying, hounding, and the ravenous demand from the thoughtless mob to police a woman's thought, her speech, and her actions. Her alleged crimes were indeed quite grave. She had a Twitter account. Not only that, but her Twitter handle was, are you ready? Her Twitter handle was Salty Feminist. And she was accused of thinking, perhaps even expressing, unconscionable things, such as the belief that no transmutative property or transubstantiation law can turn a man into a woman, or vice versa. Laura was the target of an organized campaign to get her kicked out of the classroom where she taught, and from her academic program as well. Open letters were written demanding she recant her heresy and to be punished for her own ladylike thoughts. The student newspaper printed her tweets with trigger warning disclaimers. The Title IX officer became involved. Men, as in men with a penis, a beard, and names like Christopher, emailed the chair of Laura's department reporting the indecent thoughts of a woman with an opinion. These deeply concerned men got apologetic responses like, "Thank you for reaching out to me. I appreciate you reporting this. These posts are distressing, and I assure you that I am working very hard on this with others on campus. You and others can report this further to the ethics committee." I wonder how hard this man's erection got when he received such a pathetically subservient email from the chair of the Feminist and Women's Studies department. I think about Laura often, Not only because I myself used to be a graduate student and a teaching assistant at a feminist department in neighboring Oregon, but also because I want to know the practical aspects of how she carries on with her life. What is it like to have GTA meetings with colleagues who call you scum and transphobic trash? Or to walk around an academic institution where students are publicly encouraged to physically assault you by making the highly intellectual argument, that dumb bitch needs to die. What is it like for her to wake up every morning and know that this is all hosted in the Department of Feminist Studies? This side of the Atlantic, things are not much better. This past October, a couple of months after Laura's witch hunt, the Feminist Hope Feminist Dilemma Conference, hosted by the Feminist and Women's Studies Association of the UK and Ireland, took place in London. The Feminist and Women's Studies Association of the UK and Ireland describes itself as a network which promotes feminist research and teaching. The Feminist Dilemma and Feminist Hope Conference marked the 30 years of the FWSA, describing itself as a dialogue between women in and out of academia. It did not particularly live up to the hype when a feminist and a former academic showed up to the conference and dared to do the unthinkable. She asked a question about the current sex and gender debate. The woman, named Julia, questioned the supposed transmutable property which causes men to become women and how this might impact women's rights. It is a politically current and lively question, the type that opens the floor to discussion and invites people to chime in with innovative responses. Everyone who disagreed with Laura could have easily unpacked her question from multiple angles, but not to be. A feminist academic asking a question about what constitutes a woman during a women's studies conference caused such a stir that the entire room stood up and left. Not only was this question horrific and unbecoming, but it was also an act of violence. And walking out, as opposed to addressing the question head on, was an act of solidarity. Postmodernism and identity politics have fomented a cultural climate in which the academic rigor of analyzing postulations and coming up with clever ways to challenge each other gets circumvented by appeals to tribal purity and masturbatory politics of self-aggrandizing silos. As they left, each attendee took turns to tell Julia, some of them yelling, all the ways in which she was a hideous bigot condemned to the wrong side of history. Who needs Catholic excommunication when we can have social media purges and the public sentencing of sinful souls? Hell, even the art of persuasion, which requires thoughtfulness, tact, and effort, yet oftentimes produces genuine results, has gone out the window. By standing up en masse and clearing the room as a result of one woman who asked an impertinent question, I wonder who persuaded whom. The academics at the Feminist Conference who reaffirmed each other's credential as good, proper, and pure, or the people who followed the discussion online with an ominous sense that there's something deeply wrong about the way that academic discourse is taking place. I wonder about Julia as well. What did it feel like when academic after academic at a feminist and women's studies conference told her how nasty a scum she was? Did she tear up? Or did she went into some sort of catatonic stupor in which she disconnected from her body and observed the groupthink ritual taking place in front of her? I've checked in with both women and they are doing all right. As much as one can under the circumstances. Be all right and push through. But there are Laura's and Julia's in every women's studies, gender studies, feminist studies, intersectional identitarian studies, Foucault and Butler taught me so studies in academia. The strength and determination with which those Lauras and Julias carried the burden of actually advancing women's rights, not theoretically, but in the practice, does not negate the ways in which we could all do our best to lessen that burden. The social justice inquisition has yet to realize that by bullying, harassing, and abusing women, you do not magically self-identify into being courageous, talented, resourceful, or intellectually gifted. On the contrary, you publicly broadcast a profound dearth in all of the above. It will take a critical mass of brave women in academia to push through and overcome the gaslighting and doublespeak facing feminists in universities worldwide. The rebranding of abuse as acts of solidarity, the distorting of women and gender studies into the academic arm of a misogynist top-down political movement, and the staggering weakness of institutions who should know better is enough to make most people quit and run for the hills. But then again, feminists have never been known for backing down from a fight. Thank you.